So, once you find your seat, we can all close our eyes and envision ourselves around a fire. It's a very bright fire. In fact, it's so bright because for generations, for millenniums, it's been burning. And it's been sparked and sparked and sparked. It's never been out, actually. Through empires and patriarchs, it's never been put out, this fire. And so today, in the next 12 minutes, I hope to add a very, very powerful lightning spark to this legacy of humanity. And I'm going to be asking you to represent and hold the seat of your vision, the vision quest you've been on, and the legacy you're here to leave individually as well as co-create together. So always come back to that fire. All right. So without further ado, let's journey into our legacy as a vision quest. So in today's journey, let's vision legacy as something that's been passed on from ancestors, right? Our predecessors of the past, through transmission, story maybe. But then a legacy is also something that is created by individuals and passed on. So it's not something we are inheriting as much as it's something we're here to co-create together. A vision quest, with all due respect to the Native American tradition that we've labeled vision quest, I want to tailor it to your own vision quest. Was it the birth of a child, a medicine journey, a near-death experience? What was your vision quest that actually created that moment or that series of moments where you saw your future in front of you, your role in society, your contribution, and ultimately your life purpose? What was that isolation? What was the ancestor or mentor that put you on top of that power spot to commune with nature and find your purpose? So, I feel an aspect of our legacy that we're here to co-create together is the theme of this entire conference, creating two aspects of regeneration, a regenerative society and then actually regenerative communities and land projects. So in social aspect, it's the cradle-to-cradle vision that William McDonough, a world-leading design thinker and architect, came up with. And it's that things return back to nature or return back to the industry they come from. But what about our individual projects, our individual regenerative communities, right? Well, they would look like harmonic communities, would be planetary stewards, aka Earth Jedi guardians. We'd learn how to tap into cycles and rhythms. We'd understand the growth patterns from seed to fruit, from child and conscious conception to our elder sages. We'd age like a sage, from seed to fruit. We'd tap into biodiversity, which will be coming through with Anahata later, the presentation. And ultimately, we'd reach a state of thrivability. Now, how that connects to regeneration is we have sustainability, and I love how it was mentioned yesterday that that's like birth control. It's like talking about birth control. It doesn't turn us on. Sustainability, regeneration, that is activating something. But that's the second level. The third level is thrivability, and that's what I want to help us tap into today. So here we are, right? Landowners, builders, designers, entrepreneurs, healers, artists. So thank you for all showing up this weekend. So where do you come from? What legacy do you come from? A legacy I bring forth right here, Buckminster Fuller, really helps us, examine that we cannot change how somebody thinks, but we can give them a tool that they'll lead them to think differently. So in ontological design, which our culture is really starting to tap into, we create tools, and the tools turn around and recreate us. Ontological design, really the design of the future. It's either an AI matrix or it's a regenerative community, because the tools we create will actually lead us into those futures, and they're all happening right now. And my friend Jocelyn really nails this, especially to all the people who have have star lineages in this room. Many of you I know. So if you feel like you don't fit in this world, it's because you're here to help create a new one. How many have gone through that vision quest and that near death and that resurrection of like, how did I end up here? This world seems, the prison planet kind of mentality we often see. And we know we're here to create a new one. In fact, we have memories that are a legacy beyond this planet where we were thriving in incredibly nature living system-based technology. Some call it fifth dimension, 5D, 5-density technology. And we're working with these powerful wheels of co-creation brought through by Buckminster Fuller, Barbara Marx Hubbard, and many in this room have been stewarding the wheels of co-creation. This is just one. No aspect of society and culture is left out in these blueprints. So we learn how to regenerate the energy. We learn how they are interconnected. When we are riding our bicycle instead of being in a car, we're actually building the health infrastructure of our own being, as well as contributing back to the infrastructure and the healthiness of the ecosystem. They're all interconnected. And then you can play in these sigils of co-creation. So legacy leaving. Well, Gordon Davidson and Kareen have had a big impact on many of us in this room. They formed one of the first eco-villages, the Sirius community, still running 45 years strong in Massachusetts. And they worked in the White House to build regenerative, sustainable technologies under the Clinton administration. And they also are helping Starseeds awaken to the thrivable technology of being like a new earth technology. So they've bridged so many different industries and legacies in their quest. And for me, they've really allowed me to see the infinity symbol as, the mark of regeneration, of finding ourselves in the core of the earth, connected to the sun and in our hearts, and that regeneration that happens. And a lot of the artwork I do, you'll see here on every slide, like this is from the Tribal Convergence, is really about learning to visually see these interconnected systems and learning to see through the veils. So what are we here for? What are we here to leave a legacy for? I feel like freedom, connection, energy, and health, progress, peace, it all comes down to opportunities, right? We want to see more opportunities on this planet. And those give way to really what I feel are the 5 most important leadership skills of the 21st century. Also backed, by the way, by IBM's 1,500 CEOs of leading Fortune 500 companies. Voted these as the most important skills of the 21st century. Now, why is this powerful? Well, do you imagine a time like 50 years ago when the corporate world shunned upon creativity? And now it's the #1 skill of 21st century leaders. Wow. Agility, problem solving, effective collaboration, and empathy. The ability to design and prototype solutions for the world by knowing, by listening to the heart of what wants to emerge, the emerging process. And seeing all life as interconnected. So I invite you to take a stand for life and commit to this path and start to build our legacy together. What would that look like? Well, it starts within. Feeling grounded, connected, sourced by the energy, the life force of the planet. Powerful, ecstatic, like last night, loving, and in service. And so the art, the legacy I'm here to create, the 10,000 suns, S-U-N-S, 10,000 suns, the 10,000 pieces of art, I'm about to have a show of these pieces show the interconnectedness, the free energy technology that we see in the torsion physics of our light body, the free energy technology. It's behind every galaxy, it's the spiral. It's behind every north and south pole of a planet. These interconnected patterns and the eco-villages will be creating from them. And the bridges we'll be building as people step into new levels of dimension and leave the old paradigm behind. This is our legacy. And I feel really honored to be able to bring through Source these visual things that can imprint our highest projection of our future. So, I guess the question would be, what are we walking away from? won't read the JFK quote, but that's the famous quote that one could say got him assassinated. And of course, to know what we're walking away from, what we're walking away into, we have to know where we've come from. Nomadic hunters and gatherers, a tribal society, agricultural, industrial, technological, innovational, transcending information and innovation into what some would say a connected, unified, spiritual, global culture. And then where does Tribalize fit in? So, how do we bridge these? If we've already gone through tribal societies and learned from, the often war and the rites of passage of those, where does this all fit in to Tribalize? I feel like it has something to do with what we saw like in the 1500s with the Renaissance. We went from tribal and farming agricultural to building cities and empires that turned into patriarchs. Then we had the Renaissances and Bali. When places were in the Dark Ages, Bali and Europe had these like incredible renaissances in the 1500s. And now we're moving into a planetary civilization. Part of the legacy is the challenges we're facing, the complexity, the chaos, right? The disruption and the disruptive innovation we see as entrepreneurs and innovators of tribalized regenerative communities. How many of you feel levels of uncertainty each day, but it doesn't feel like the uncertainty 10 years ago? It's actually like a spark, that the fear is becoming a special emotion. There's a fire inside of you, and that fear is actually welcomed. That uncertainty is welcome because it drives your passion, right? And the legacy of open sourcing technologies like we saw yesterday being developed, the networks, the agile resilience, right? Collaboration and the imagination fueling all of it. So, 3 or 4 speakers have mentioned Dunbar's 150. That it takes about 150 is the maximum of really deep relationships you can have. So let's use that as a bookmark for a regenerative community. That 150, and imagine the 150 people that are closest to you in your life and the conversations you have, and maybe some of the challenges you've had from not being in touch for years, right? If we take Dunbar's 150, and use that as a neo-tribal eco-village, and we take a number like 12 through ancient culture as the mastermind or the high council, then we can use those to prototype expansive and regenerative festivals, towns, cities, and planets. Like we have at Burning Man, which has grown from 10,000 to 80,000, and the Venus Project, which can accommodate 100,000. But nobody has to travel far because it's based on circular models in the heart, and therefore you're not going long distances because it's extracted out of a centrifugal model. Davin, I did a visionary community 10-day training there, and I got to learn about legacy leaving because they have built a legacy over 50 years that is only growing, and they've created their own language, their own symbolism, their own mystery school, their own university. They are a federation, sovereign, and connected to the Italian government, and they have their own constitution and currency. So they're kind of dreaming up everything that we're here in this room to co-create. But they've done it at a level that, well, you'll just have to visit it yourself. So, dear Shiloh and I have been playing with our own myth-making and legacy leaving through Design the New World, a 5-module leadership academy we've launched in Encinitas now. And we're going into the heart of regenerative society, the design mind of a planet in transition, and how to design your life, the companies, the organizations around that. So this whole presentation is actually just a pitch around the design thinking, that the planet has created everything we need to know. And if we can tap into biomimicry and regenerative design and permaculture design, then we're going to be on our way to leaving a legacy that's going to span beyond a few generations. And Shiloh and I and a lot of people we've been inspired by are really building these superhero suits in our anatomy of a regenerative society. And so I'll just leave you with that it's time to build our tool belts and really embody the key aspects of this anatomy, because the legacy we're here to leave is going to be embodied. And we're going through a planetary ascension process that is actually going to actualize all the 97% junk DNA and the 9 strands of DNA that are supposedly unlocked, the right 12-strand DNA, and it goes on and on. But these regenerative patterns that are in our body are really all about our ability to have future foresight and then step into them with our bodies. Flow states, right? So 2 books I want to leave you with that are literally the blueprint of the legacy building. David Kelly, founder of Wired Magazine, Where Good Ideas Come From. The book that will literally blow your mind and help you to engineer the legacy blueprint of building ideas and bringing them out to the world. And then right here, The Geography of Genius by Eric Weiner looks at the entire history of every society that created a legacy and a renaissance, and what were the conditions, the right soil that allowed it to furrow. Silicon Valley and investment money, the Renaissance, so the art, and the Savoy family founding people like Da Vinci and letting these leading edge thinkers be funded. Fast Company just launched in 2017 1,000 world-changing ideas awards. So we have to remember that we are still in a bit of a bubble in these tribal cultures, and that there are hundreds and thousands of organizations and startups creating game-changing areas. And they identified 12 categories and awarded through the 1,000 submissions. You can check that out on Fast Company's website. So I want to start to wrap up this legacy leaving by understanding that we are facing challenges and we're becoming solutionaries, right? The ideas and actions we're taking when we see a transformation is needed. But, representing the eternal Tao, it's all perfection. Like, we actually really can't change anything because the universe and this planet is sacred. And every 45 number President Trump that comes into office reminds us that challenges, solutions are great, but there's a perfection always unfolding. And it's somewhere in the middle between war and peace, and hierarchy and holarchy, and competition and collaboration. So wake up every day and find that perfection within, and it's going to allow you to feel the vitality to design a 50-year legacy. If you're 40 right now, what does that legacy look like? How do you know you fulfilled it when you're 90? Or if you're Jacques Fresco in 101, still every day waking up at the Venus Project, leaving this legacy, how do you know when it's time to retire? Or are you playing the finite or the infinite game? So, from birth to death, right? Do you want to be older and really questioning, did you step into your purpose? Okay. And how does the legacy for the next 7 generations hold in your heart? It's easy to get high in this culture to have lofty visions and eat lots of superfoods, and it's harder to ground the energy as Oroville is facing tons of challenges. 60 years later into the project, tons of challenges that we can reflect back on. And it all comes back down to stories and systems. The legacy that can be passed on has to be embedded with these two. Let's jump ahead a few. These are some of the great stories. The New Earth Army, created by our military, is actually a living thing. I invite you to look it up. It's a 50-year-old project launched by the military and Esalen Institute. And it's quite profound to know the legacy that our government has tried to leave, but has been stopped in the way of the New Earth. So check out New Earth Army. Here are all the memes happening. Airbnb design challenges where we could literally, in this room, be making $5 million solving some of the world's problems by entering these prize challenges. And of course, all the future cities are now being funded, like Masdar in the Arab nation. World building is another meme. We see young kids actually designing new worlds, arcologies based on through their technology. And if you can go actually to the last slide, we're going to skip a lot of the memes right here. Who built a legacy, who is building a legacy, and who has tried to build a legacy that's on hold or that's being held back. Those are key 3 areas to leave. And you'll see on the next slide that George Lucas's Star Wars has become a legacy of Epcot Center, the experimental prototype city of tomorrow that Walt Disney built, is, I feel, the strongest legacy I've seen on the planet, up there with Davenport and Oroville. And who's building a legacy? Cairo Society, 5,000 youth changing the world through enterprise creation. And then there's legacy on holds. And I won't go into those, but question what is keeping you from bringing your project to its next level and really leaving a legacy. So, being in love with mystery schools and ancient teachings and shamanism, I've also had to bridge the world as a whole systems designer and being in the creative industry and as a foresight strategist. I've had to dive between the worlds of leaving a legacy that can seem confusing to people. And that comes back to language, the language of your heart and the language of your legacy, and understanding what you're really here to leave, and shapeshift between those two and find the legacy by finding the language of your soul essence. And that comes back down to the vision quest, the pain, the trauma, the challenges, and the triumph that came out of that moment where you questioned all of life, or you brought new life into this world. What did you learn in that vision quest? And keep coming back to that. And that's the fire that I opened this presentation with. That's the fire we're all a part of. And so make sure your spark is consistently being renewed in that fire. And let's leave a legacy. The legacy is our vision quest.